All right, now, do some fan questions.
Hey Chael, this is probably going to be old news by the time it gets to you, but Dominic Reyes just indirectly on Twitter accused John Jones of sending a spy into his camp. Is this something that actually takes place? How is this an actual practice? And what would you do about a spy in your camp? Thank you.
No, it is not an actual practice, but it is a marketing ploy that an uncreative person will digest about every 4 years. Where the original spy in my camp came from was Rampage Jackson John Jones. And Rampage Jackson had just worked on elbows. He was just working on his elbows. And John Jones sent out a tweet that he was going to go in and work on elbow defense. So Rampage was certain he had a spy in camp, which, by the way, he may have. It kind of does sound coincidentally like somebody from that team sent a message to somebody else. The reason I'm telling you that it's not a real thing, though, and the reason I'm answering it that way is because, yes, everything that happens at camp gets out. Of course it does. If it doesn't get out by one of your teammates who's got a friend, right, it's a very small world. You and I have never met, and this is our second time interacting just by example. It's very easy to get a hold of people nowadays. So in the world of MMA, it's even smaller. So sure, somebody sees something in the gym, somebody tells somebody else, boom, it gets back, all of a sudden he's a mole. Well, no, not necessarily. He was just a guy in the gym that relayed something, Dominic was doing this it's one of those things. Not necessarily somebody trying to gain favor with John Jones. And moreover, on my theory that no, it's not a real thing, all the while being a real thing, is how do you have a surprise? I mean, Dominic Reyes has fought on television 11 times on a 4-camera shoot, all archived right now at something called fightpass.com. For $9.99 a month, you can watch all the Dominic Reyes you want. So what do you mean you had a mole in the camp? It's right, it's one of those things. It's one of these very bizarre phenomenons. BJ Penn had done this to George St. Pierre, which was a complete lie. Now, I think Rampage maybe did have somebody that leaked something. At least Rampage had a great timeline to believe it. BJ Penn, just to troll St. Pierre, said, I got a mole in your camp, just to get under his skin and irritate him. I've got all the emails. I can still remember. It was funny. It was not true. He made it up, but it worked. And that's where I come back to my original analysis that about every 7 or 8 years, somebody that isn't overly creative puts out the story of a mole in camp.
Hey, Chael, this is Philip from Michigan. I just had a quick question about the guys that are going up in weight or the guys that come off long periods of time without fighting, like Robert Whitaker, Luke Rockhold, Chris Weidman. All three of those guys came out and they said that they never felt better. This is the best they ever felt. And the training camp went amazing. But then we see them come out and get knocked out in the first round, or in Robert Whitaker's case, the first and second round. And is there something to that? Like, do these guys have to say that to believe in themselves, or do they have to say this to make the fans believe in them more? I would love to know. Thanks for all the great content, and keep it up. Thank you.
Okay, so the psychology on that, I think you probably hit it on the head that you're trying to say something and you're trying to believe it and make it true. The other side of that coin is that's how things become true. That's what goal setting is all about. You set a goal, you work hard toward it, you tell somebody. Really great goal setting, go a step further, write it down. One step beyond that, tape it on the mirror every day that you brush your teeth in so that you see your goal every single day. But that's how things do begin to happen. So there is a piece of that. And I'm not certain that in the examples that you gave that those guys underperformed. I thought Robert Whitaker actually fought very well. Robert Whitaker was saying, look, that guy was hard to get to. That guy was hard to see. He was moving at some weird angles. Well, I believe that too. That's what it looked like. Like he was in there with a unique, dynamic fighter that has similar skill set. They were kind of playing each other's game. And when you do that, it does come down to, okay, I better be better at this than this guy. And I only got one way to find out. That's with 4-ounce gloves on television in front of the world, going hard. I mean, that's just the reality of the situation. So I do think that when guys are out, that there is a little bit of an apprehensiveness, and you do have to then rely to your training. Okay, how did I do in training? And there are some things in training that you can quantify. They're not necessarily what you would think. They weren't, hey, well, how was my grappling today or how was my sparring today? There are some quantifiable things, though. Running would be an example. How fast 2 years ago could you do a mile or 2 miles or 3 miles? But you could set that metric, you could write it down, and then you could actually go back and look. You could say, no, I'm in the same shape as I was in. Weights, they got little numbers on those plates. And if you keep a diary or a log, you can know, am I doing today what I was doing back then or more? My coach, Clayton Hires, wrote everything down. We had to go do a run. Oh my goodness, this was so difficult. We did it every Sunday. But every Sunday, he brought a stopwatch and he brought a pad and a pen. He could go find that right now and tell you, what I was doing in 2008 all the way to June of this year when we stopped doing that run. But the point being, there are some things that you can quantify. There's other things, yeah, you got to sell yourself on. Sure.
Hey Chael, this is Roland Wixer from Germany. If you could eliminate one weight class from the UFC and add one weight class to the UFC, what would you choose?
Okay, I would never choose to eliminate a weight class. And I think that's how you worded it, so I think I'm off the hook. I don't think you said, hey, Chael, here's the game. You have to eliminate a weight class. It said if I could. So I'm going to elect to avoid that. I like opportunity. But you want to know a weight class that I've always liked? And it existed in amateur wrestling. It was called 220 pounds. To put in perspective, the Olympic champion and the world champion at 220 pounds was Kurt Angle. Went on to be a famous professional wrestler, but that's where Kurt Angle did his finest work. And I've never seen enough opportunity to some of the bigger guys. I mean, if you look at the discrepancy in weight between 205 pounds and 265 pounds, I think we can agree that there's not a ton of opportunity there for some of those bigger guys. And you could also argue it on the other end of the spectrum. What is a guy? 25's in there now and 35's in there now. But when it wasn't, what do you do if you're one of those smaller guys, particularly with even other sports? Not a lot of 125 pounders signed to the Chicago Cubs right now. There's not a lot of guys that weigh 135 pounds that are playing in the NBA or that have ever played in the NFL, by example. So they need opportunity too. So I don't want to take a weight class away. I love when they add them. I hear all of the arguments to 165. I love it, but I don't see the discrepancy between 55 and 70. And then throwing a 65 in there, even if you move 70 to 75. I mean, you see the difference? I do see a discrepancy where maybe some guys are being eliminated in that higher weight class. So if it was me, I'd add a 220.
Chael, a huge fan from Louisville, Kentucky. My question to you is Israel Adesanya versus Stephen Thompson. Please tell me that wouldn't be the highest level chess match you've ever seen in your entire life. Both have kickboxing history. I mean, incredible records. My question to you is, how do you think that one plays out? Thanks.
Well, that is interesting, right? Because two parts. First off, and Wonder Boy is a fantastic fighter. I mean, this guy is something special, and he's unique, to your point. He's dynamic, which I think is kind of what you were alluding to. Adesanya is the greatest fighter in the world today, period. I believe Adesanya beats Jon Jones regardless of the size. I know he's a better fighter than Jon Jones. I think he beats him straight up regardless of what the scale says. I think Adesanya goes in there and kicks Jones' ass. So another way of asking that is, do I believe that Wonder Boy beats up Jon Jones? No, it seems like a little bit of a stretch to me. But I also think that you're asking stylistically. I think that's why you brought those two guys together. So yes, make no mistake, Wonder Boy's going to get some minutes in. Wonder Boy's even going to get some rounds in. Wonder Boy might even get 3-4 rounds in. Ultimately, Adesanya is the bigger animal. And size is going to matter if you're playing a striking game. That's what they would be playing. I love the matchup. I got no problem with what you're doing there. Size matters. Adesanya.
Hi, Chael. I know from a lot of your comments that you'd agree that it's kind of hard to get people excited for a fight when they think they know the outcome. So, with your prediction that Khabib will be fighting Mayweather, and I'm pretty sure you're right, Khabib himself has spoken about it, how on earth are we supposed to get excited to see Khabib box Mayweather? Conor McGregor is at least a better boxer than Khabib, and Floyd beat Conor, so, where's the competitiveness in anticipating that fight?
Yeah, and I think of all the sweepstakes, I still think you got to come back to Masvidal. I think that's the one that works. I think that's the storyline. I think just between old man Mayweather and where Roberto Duran's going to insert himself, I mean, that alone before you bring the BMF versus 50-0 into play. But if you were to do Khabib, and I'm with you, we should not do Khabib. That is not the fight to do for North America. For Khabib's part of the world, and to quote Ariel Helwani, Khabib is the most famous Muslim athlete alive. Anywhere Khabib goes, he's bringing a whole gob of people with him. They just are. By the way, he happens to be unbeaten. Khabib just doesn't lose competitions. By the way, he's never been outstruck. By the way, when he got into a striking contest with Conor McGregor, who just went a half hour with Floyd, Khabib set Conor on his butt. Those things happened. Ultimately, aside from everything I just said, I am completely with you. We do not make Khabib a guy who is a fighter for his grappling paralysis, top heavy for sure, matched up in a Western boxing Queensberry rules fight against Floyd Mayweather. I do agree with you. But you asked me how would we sell that? And there is a way to sell it. And there's a lot of Khabib haters out there. Somebody that just wants to see a guy that successful get beat. That sells in some ways. I am still maintaining that I agree with you. That is not the boxing match to make.
Hey, Chael. So I was thinking about a double trilogy fight card with Nate versus Conor, and then DC versus Stipe. Let's say, Conor gets a good win, good quick win against the potential Cerrone fight. I think that would be a great, a really great card for the UFC to do, especially around late quarter one. What do you think about that?
Hey, I love your booking. Let me see your booking and raise you a booking. We do it in Stockton. We call it 209. We put Nick Diaz on top of the bill versus George Masvidal. George puts the BMF title up for grabs, even though he doesn't have to. We put Conor versus Nate as the co-main event. What do you think?
Hey Uncle Joe, had the honour of meeting you down in Melbourne and you were amazing. Just got a quick question. For your final fight, if you had it again, would you rather something that's super personal like the one against Vanderlei or the one against Anderson Silva with a lot of build, a lot of hype and a lot of trash talk? Or would you rather something a little bit more respectful like how Bisping finished his career against Calvin Gastelum? Thanks.
Well, I did like how Bisping did that. Bisping was sure up against it. That was on short notice. He just had his heart broken, lost his championship, had the biggest fight of his career. Everything went down. He still got on the airplane and stepped in there with a hammer like KG, and he passed the torch. That was a cool thing that Bisping did. And when you called it respectful, I think that that is your definition of respectful, and it's certainly mine. That's a hard one for me to speculate about. I really don't love it when guys who are retired come back and they attempt to dangle some kind of a carrot. Are you retired or aren't you? And if you say that you'll come back, but you'll only come back under this circumstance, well, then aren't you being a bit of a bully? Isn't that what bullies do? Bullies set the parameters to their fights. They'll only fight if, and they'll only fight if, and they'll only fight if. All those ifs equal one thing. If I think I can beat you, then I'll fight you. I don't like doing that. So the way you asked it, though, and you didn't ask me an opponent, you just asked me would I want to do a grudge match or would I want to do something more respectful. Those were the comparisons you gave me. I think they're both great options. If you're asking me for me personally, I suppose I'll choose grudge.